Okay, this is basic lichen biology, and so lichens are 98% or so fungi, and the fungus can be divided into, well, a couple of groups, but ascomycetes. So those are the orange peel fungus, morels. The spores basically point up, and in this particular one, the apothecia up here. That's where the spores are. And then the basiomycetes, of which only about 1% of the lichens are actually basiomycetes, those are more like your mushrooms you'd find in the store that have gills, and the fungus or the spores are coming off the gills. So, so that's the mycobiont, and so the photobiont is the algae. So that's either blue-green algae, which is prokaryotic. So the DNA is scattered through it. So it is basically a photosynthetic bacteria. And then there's the eukaryotic, which is basically what we think of as algae, as a distinct nucleus, more related to plants than bacteria. And that, for example, this is pretty much a eukaryotic algae. So it's kind of lighter in color, and this is primarily a prokaryotic algae, so it's darker in color, you can see. And so, but, something like a peltigera can have either one, so it's not that clear cut. I think one of the more amazing things about lichens is that you can have this algae and a fungus join together in nature and then produce this organism, and it's fairly consistent. Not certainly 100% consistent, but and so this is a symbiotic relationship. So broadly, and the eukaryotic. I'm going to say eukaryotic and prokaryotic can intertwine somewhat, but they're usually one is more dominant than the other, and that is the way it's generally keyed. So generally, there are a few areas in the keys where you have to split them open, but you can do that with a razor blade, and then you can see the algae very distinctive under like a 10 to 20 power hand lens, and like that. But anywho, so what we're looking at here are two types of crustose, and so this is one of the big divisions. So it's basically on the form it takes. So there's nothing really fundamentally taxonomic about crustose versus foliose versus fruticose. There's nothing fundamental. You can have crustose things that have fruticose and foliose members of that species in that genus. So there's a number of things that look fairly fruticose that actually are crustose. But anyway, so it's not fundamentally taxonomic. It's not like in plants the number of petals or the numbers of carpels in a flower is emblematic of the plant family, and that's not so much the case in algae. In algae and fungus, and so the taxonomy is really aimed more at the fungus member and the fruiting bodies thereof, especially the spores and how spores are shaped, and how many septations are in the spores, and that requires a good compound microscope to see. Not a terribly good one, but a decent one. So crustose are things that cannot be separated from what they're growing on. So this is a piece of bark. I cannot separate those and keep the lichen intact. And so we have a Chrysothrix, is the yellower one. And it's almost grainy by comparison to the other one. It's not 100% on. So, and as we move up, we have the foliose. See if I can focus. So foliose, like the name suggests, it looks like a leaf. And so in this case, if I flip it over, there's the black underside. So foliose has a distinct upper and lower surface. and it's very distinctive in this. It's not necessarily distinctive in others. So in this particular one, it's pretty distinctive. So there's often root-like structures on the bottom. So to give it away. And so foliose. And then there's fruticose. And fruticose has a three-dimensional shape. It's attached at a discrete location and a good three-dimensional shape. And there's some apothecias on the side. So this is a Usnea stringosa, actually a pretty good example. There are things that are attached. They used to be just called umbelliferae, and they look pretty fruticose, but I believe they're, in some keys, they're either their own group or they fall into the foliose, because they have, the upper side is very distinctive from the lower side, bottom side. And these, generally speaking, the fruticose are well, three-dimensional. So, but anyway, another division that you can see every so often in keys are the jelly lichens, and this is dried out, so it's not terribly obvious. But and they're usually, some of them tend towards fruticose, but it's more like the thallus rises up and then curls. So they still have a distinctive upper and lower surface, but it's fairly confusing. But anyway, the jelly lichens are, when they're wet, they're like jelly. So, and there's 4 or 5, I'm going to say 3 fairly common genera in that group. And this is a good Florida one, so a Leptogium. And like that. So, and depending on the key, you can have different arrangements. So here we have a crustose that is really very smooth. It doesn't even look like it looks like it could be the texture of the bark, but not so much the case. So, but anyway, a lot of these, almost regardless, you're going to have to look at the spores, especially in Florida. Florida is really unexplored as far as a lot of the lichens go. There's a guy by the name of Richard Harris that did a lot of work on them, and one of the first things he does is, what's the shape of the spores? So that means you got to be very serious about it. So, but anyway, those are the main divisions. And then, like in botany, it's all about vocabulary and how you interpret that. So hopefully there's a glossary in the back of the key, and then it's a matter of matching the adjectives towards the section of the key. So I've had some videos on dichotomous keys, and so lichens are not different as far as that goes. In that you generally have 2 choices, and it's either one or the other. And for a lot of lichens in a lot of books, and this is distinguishing a good key from a bad key, they'll often say something like thallus size from 0.2 to 1 centimeter, or 1 centimeter to 2 centimeters, and generally speaking, the one you might get is 1 centimeter. So what do you pick? So it's fairly complicated, and a better key would be 0.2 to 1 or bigger. Those are your choices, and you go with the bigger, and it's always going to be the average rather than one particular. You're going to always find something bigger or smaller in the key, or some unusual ones. It's quite refreshing to find something that actually keys out straight. But in today's day and age, one of the good things to do is just look the damn thing up on the internet once you get to a name and see if it looks like it. And so that's a way of checking your work. The answer's in the metaphorical back of the book.